This video is going to look at multiplying and dividing numbers by powers of 10. So this is a continuation from the last video. So here's a method that is used. I don't commonly use this method because normally, remember, this represents 100, this represents 10, and this represents 1. So in decimals, it represents 1.0, 0.1, and 0.01. I'll show you how it's done, but I do not expect any of my students to use this method unless you're really comfortable with it. So over here, what this is trying to say to us is you have 2 divided by 10 equals 0.2. This would be 0.5 divided by 10 equals 0.05. And this right here is 3.1 divided by 10 equals 0.31. Okay, that's my daughter in the background. She wants to do math too, apparently. So I'm going to go through these activities and I'm going to write the answer. The next few slides will show you how to get this answer. So 3.0 divided by 10 is 0.3. This is 0.04, 0.34, 0.27. So now let's see why this happens. So you move the decimal when you're multiplying by 10 to the right because the number is getting bigger. So the decimal goes here. So what number goes in the blank? Well, you have 34.25 times 10 equals 342.5. So when you do it backwards, you move the decimal this direction, 34.25. So division is the opposite of multiplication. It undoes the effects of multiplication. This is all the stuff we learned in our algebra unit. When you multiply by 10, you move the decimal to the right. So the decimal goes that way. When you divide by 10, you move the decimal to the left. So let's look at some examples. So because you're here, you're dividing by 10, you have 1 0. This goes 1 spot to the left. 1 0, 1 spot to the left. 1 0, 1 spot to the left. So it would be written like this, but you can put a 0 in the front. And you have a 10 here, so that means 1 spot to the left, decimal 0.16, but we typically put a 0 at the front. Okay, let's look at now this next example of dividing with 100. Because there's 2 zeros, we move 2 spots, 1, 2. Decimal goes there, 0.145. Here, we only have 1, so we move it 1 spot, 46.48. 2 spots here, 1, 2, and since we added a loop, we need to include a 0 here. So the answer looks like this, and then you put the 0 in the front. 2 spots here, 1, 2, put a 0 there, so decimal 0.06, and you put a 0 in the front. If you do this on a calculator, you're going to get this. So we have the number 67 and we divide it by 10. There's no decimal here. The decimal is actually hidden at the end. So when you divide it by 10 and you move it to the left, the answer is 6.7. So let's look at these examples. 2 zeros, the decimal's right there. 1, 2 equals 0.18. Put the 0 in the front. 2 zeros, 1, 2, 19.87. Okay. So now let's divide by 10 or 100. So let's keep an eye on the decimals here. 10 means 1 decimal jump to the left. 23.6. We have 3 zeros here. Decimal is over there. 1, 2, 3. So now it goes over here. Decimal 537. Put a 0 at the front. Decimal's hidden over here if we can't see it. 1, 2. 12.30. And lastly, 1 decimal jump here. It goes over here. So when the decimal is not seen, it's all the way to the right. So how would you shift the decimal point to divide by 1,000? So remember, we're going to the left, and there's 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. The decimal will go right here. We can't leave an empty area, so we have to put a 0, and we put a 0 at the beginning. So there's your answer, 0.045. And a couple more exercises here. So divide by 1,000. There are 3 zeros here. Decimals over here. 1, 2, 3. 2.934. 3 zeros here. The decimals over here. 1, 2, 3. So it would be decimal 4, 2, 3. Put a 0 at the front. 3 zeros. 1, 2, 3. Have to put a 0 there. Decimal 0, 1, 8, 9. And you put a 0 at the front. And this one's going to be a little tricky because it's 3 jumps. 1, 2, 3. So we have to fill it in with 2 zeros. Decimal 0, 0, 1, 3, 1. And we put a 0 at the front. Our last slide simply tells you multiplying by 10, 100, or 1,000 makes the number bigger, so the decimal moves to the right. Dividing makes the number smaller, so the decimal moves to the left. So I would rewatch this video if I went too fast. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.